Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Tragedy in Kelowna. 3 students on the cusp of graduation are killed in an overnight car crash. Also,
I think it'll be a really slow rollout for me.
Careful and hopeful.
We need social contact.
British Columbians feel some relief as more pandemic restrictions are set to ease. And
I begged him to take the rest of my stuff and throw it out, but just not that suitcase.
she says her mother's ashes were lost in a street cleanup. Why advocates want changes to how people's possessions are handled on the downtown east side.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Anita is off this week. Families, students, and teachers in Kelowna are grieving the loss of 3 teenagers killed in a car crash overnight. As the CBC's Brady Strachan reports, the victims are all grade 12 students at the same school and about to graduate.
RCMP investigators spent the entire day at the crash scene, sifting through the wreckage of a black Honda Civic that lies crumpled on the side of the road. Police blocked off Gordon Drive for several hundred meters on either side. Multiple panels of black tarp-like fencing obscure the view of the scene from the road and nearby apartment buildings. Among the wreckage is a light standard, sheared off at the base and now lying near a sidewalk. The single vehicle crash happened just after midnight, claiming 3 young lives. The RCMP say an 18-year-old female driver, an 18-year-old male passenger, and a 17-year-old female passenger all died at the scene. Kevin Cardall is the superintendent of School District 23. He says the 3 victims were all grade 12 students attending Kelowna Secondary School.
Our thoughts and heart go out to the families who've experienced the loss of a child now. That's where our minds are at this point, and commencement will take place, and we'll find a way to honor those students and support students as they continue to grieve, as they also complete their graduation requirements.
The school district has sent a critical response team to the high school to help students and staff with the grieving process. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
BC's COVID numbers are again more positive today. Daily case counts have hit their lowest total since the end of October at 250. Sadly, though, 3 more people have died from the disease, meaning we have now lost 1,683 people. The number of people in hospital does remain steady from yesterday, and the province is on the brink of passing the 3 million mark for adults given their first vaccine dose. The plan to reopen BC still has many questions, though, like how did health leaders decide now is the best time to do it? Justin McElroy breaks down the numbers behind the restart.
Too slow or too fast? That's the question a lot of British Columbians are asking after the province announced its COVID-19 reopen strategy yesterday. The reason being that what was announced was much greater than a lot of people anticipated, including people from other households being able to gather in another person's house immediately, something no one thought was on the table just a few days ago. But the reason for the province's confidence, well, you can see it in this chart. Every 6 days or so for the past month and a half, cases have gone down by about 100 on a consistent level. Now, based what we know on transmission, those numbers will decline at about the same rate most likely for another week and a half until we see the result of these restrictions being lifted. But at that point, more than 50% of all British Columbians will be 2 weeks past their first vaccine shot. And what we've seen in all jurisdictions that utilize Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca as their vaccines is once you get to that 50% point, we haven't seen a place surge in cases after that. Of course, there are still questions on the way, including second shot timeline and whether new variants are more resistant to the vaccines that we use. But that's why the province believes it can go ahead now with its bold reopening plan. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Advocates are calling for changes to the way people's possessions are dealt with on the downtown east side. That comes after a woman's suitcase was taken as part of a street cleanup. As the CBC's Wamish Hamilton reports, the woman says it contained her mother's ashes.
I don't know what to do. I still find it hard to be without her.
Stacy McMillan is still struggling with the loss of her mother in the fall, made even harder now that she is living on the street. But a gift from a family friend recently was meant to provide some comfort.
A 14-care class, like it's in memory of, and it had my mom's picture. And it looked like a medicine bag, but it wasn't a medicine bag. It was some of her ashes.
But she says those ashes have now been lost, thanks to the actions of a VPD officer.
When I got up to go, that's when I noticed he had my suitcase.
McMillan says 2 weeks ago, an officer accompanied by city crews were clearing the streets around Main and Hastings when the officer threw her bag away.
I begged him to take the rest of my stuff and throw it out, but just not that suitcase.
She says eventually he grabbed her bag, but much of the contents had fallen out, and the ashes were gone.
The officer went through the whole luggage with her present, and there were no ashes.
VPD say an officer then drove to the dump to check again for the ashes, but found nothing. It says they weren't sure the bag belonged to her, so couldn't simply give it back, but insist officers give those in the streets time to move their belongings.
This is all these people have, and we're really in tune to that. We know that, and I can say with confidence that our officers do pay the utmost respect, knowing that to these people. This is sometimes all they have.
It's callous, it's inhumane, but this has become normalized in the city of Vancouver.
But advocates say the street clearing shows a lack of empathy for the people living there.
In the morning, when they get woken up by the police or these workers, you're literally they literally take your stuff.
McMillan says she hasn't yet filed a complaint.
It won't resolve what happened. It won't resolve bringing her back.
Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Several people who live in camper vans and cars in East Vancouver hit the streets today to protest an eviction order for them to leave by today. Their makeshift camp near Slocan Street has been there for about 2 years. The city says they're parked illegally and has repeatedly warned them of eviction. But residents say they have nowhere else to go and cannot find affordable housing. The city has offered free towing to a location where they can legally park. CBC News has uncovered new details about a man charged with killing his girlfriend in Alberta. The body of Brenda Ware was found near Radium Hot Springs in BC earlier this month. Philip Toner is charged with her murder less than 6 weeks after he finished serving a sentence for sexually assaulting a teenager and after a long history of violence against women. Colleen Underwood explains.
CBC News recently obtained parole documents for 41-year-old Philip Toner that detail a violent history. Toner was convicted of sexual assault for raping a 15-year-old girl in 2015. He was sentenced to 5 years for the assault and other crimes. According to the documents, the Parole Board of Canada had grave concerns about Toner's history of violence and substance misuse. A recent assessment found he was a moderate to high risk to reoffend sexually. It also said the potential for his successful reintegration into the community was low. Still, Toner completed his sentence at the end of March this year, and by then the Parole Board no longer monitored his movements. About 6 weeks later, Ware's body was found.
She truly had such a clean heart and a pure heart that she would take the worst of the worst guys, and somehow she attracted them, and try to save them. She wanted to help them, she wanted to grow them, she wanted to, come into my home, I'll feed you, I'll help you with anything you need. You don't have clothes, I'll buy you clothes. She was that kind of person.
Ware was a hairdresser and worked in Sundre for years. Her family says they were immediately suspicious when she didn't show up for work on May 5th because she loved her job and her clients. They also found her front door open, a fire in her home, and her vehicle gone. A day later, RCMP found her body and her Jeep near Radium, BC. Toner was later arrested in the Okanagan and charged with second-degree murder. Friends say Ware had just started dating Toner, but her parents never met him. They spoke to CBC News but didn't want to go on camera.
I don't think we'll ever understand because it's an ongoing criminal investigation that we don't know why, when, or how.
All those questions can't be answered.
Until court, when we find out in court, then I don't think we'll ever know why. And as parents, you think the worst. At least I think the worst.
Toner is now in custody in Alberta because police believe this is where she was killed. He's set to appear in court at the end of May. RCMP say they're still seeking any information about where or Toner in the days before her death and his arrest. Colleen Underwood, CBC News, Calgary.
Back here in BC, more arrests today at logging blockades on southern Vancouver Island. Police had their hands full trying to remove protesters who embedded themselves in the ground. The CBC's Kieran Outshorn is there.
So I'm here at the Braden, Maine, which is just about 30 minutes away from Port Renfrew. And just behind me is where the police action was taking place today. 5 people had locked themselves to the ground using a variety of different devices, and police were using jackhammers and pickaxes to try to dig people out from the ground.
Be informed, by you blockading this roadway and preventing Teal Cedar and their contractors from conducting their operations, you are in breach of this injunction order.
So far they've arrested 3 people. There's another 2 that are still locked in just up the road. And that's probably all the enforcement that's going to happen today. But there are still, as many as 100 people in some of the camps that are located around here.
I'm here to protect the old growth forests from being logged. No one has the right to take them down. No one has the right to this land except for the First Nations.
To have those taken away when there's so few is extremely tragic, and we have a moral responsibility, or at least I feel like I have a moral responsibility to be here right now to protect those trees for future generations to come.
Police are here in force today. There are as many as 30 officers with dozens of vehicles, including a command center and a variety of different equipment.
The main goal here at the end of the day is that everybody's safe and there's no injuries. So as long as that takes, that's how long it'll take. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time, and we're going to continue enforcement action until it's no longer required.
They've also set up a series of blockades. I had to be escorted through several of them before I was able to get here, and I passed a variety of people who said they were legal observers who were turned away at each of the points. As I said, there are 2 people left to be arrested, and it's yet to see what will happen tomorrow.
Time for weather with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Joe, storms are brewing.
Storms are brewing. You said it, Dan. It feels like rain. It smells like rain.
Looks like
it's gonna rain.
Yeah,
it looks like rain on the radar.
You're ticking like 7 boxes there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's raining. It's about to cross the strait as we speak. Let me take you to the special weather statement that's been in place for about 24 hours. We knew this was coming. We're looking at upwards of 40 to 50 millimeters through the overnight and Tuesday morning hours for the Sunshine Coast, through Howe Sound and northern sections of Metro Vancouver. So not everyone getting the full deluge, but it is going to rain for everyone. We're actually tapping into a mini atmospheric river, so a bit of a fire hose pointing subtropical moisture right across the south coast. It's just crossing the strait right now. Nanaimo has been getting hit for the past couple of hours. We're just starting to see that moisture. Bowen Island has been getting a good amount of rain in the past hour. Just, again, first drops falling for parts of downtown Vancouver. But I actually think it's going to take a couple more hours to fully fill in, if you will. Watch as they take you through the evening hours. It's sort of, because the center of the low is crossing the island, we sort of get a bit of a twirling motion with the heavy rain. Pre-dawn hours is when I'm thinking we'll get the heaviest of the downpours, the kind of rain that might end up waking some of us up through the overnight because it'll come down that heavily. Tomorrow, it's the perfect setup for an unstable Thursday. So, Dan, that means cool weather, chance of a thunderstorm, lots more downpours possible. A quick look across the province. I'll get you through to a much more summer-like forecast later on in the show. But right now, it's really just the south coast getting the heavy rain, Dan.
Okay, something to watch for. Thanks very much, Joe. And thanks to those of you who've been watching online on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, as well as YouTube tonight. We're going to be joining our TV broadcast in just a moment now that hockey is wrapped up. We'll have more on our top stories and a lot more. Stick around.